Hey everybody, this is Larry Schneider from Phoenix Pagan Pride Day, and I am here with Genevieve El-Masri from Zombie Apothecary. Hey Genevieve, how you doing?
Hi, today. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about the idea of being able to talk about divination from an Afro-Caribbean perspective. So
I'm very excited to hear about it. I wanted to know about I love different kinds of divination, and this is something that I'm not really too familiar with. So I really am anxious to hear about it. So tell us a little bit about yourself first.
So I'm a priestess in Santeria. I'm initiated to Oshu, and I've been practicing for the majority of my life. I moved out to the Sun Valley probably about 14 years ago. I have basically dedicated my whole life to the study of Santeria. I've initiated many people and just ultimately have tried to smash a lot of the different cultural biases that might, or the preconceived notions that there may be about Afro-Caribbean traditions, bringing insight and knowledge and sharing a little bit about my experience and kind of dispelling some of the myths and sharing information for those who are interested. So
Yeah, excellent. So tell us about the divination that you're going to talk about, the cowrie shells.
there's two different divinations that I want to talk about. The first one is called the Merendilogun divination, or the Dilogun divination as we call it, which is the divination system that is used in Santeria to speak and have a conversation with the Orisha Elegua. And this form of divination is used by having 21 cowries, and 5 cowries are put aside. Those are called the witnesses. So 16 cowries are the ones that are read. This divination system is a divination system that is only done by those who are formally initiated as an Olorisha, or a child of the Orisha, or practitioner in their tradition, and requires several years of practice and understanding and really of research. It is not like tarot or other forms of divination that work solely on intuition, although there is an intuitive component of it. There's an actual corpus of information called Oduifa, which are different parables and sayings and phrases, prohibitions and advice, depending on the patterns or signs that come out. Now, with the Dilogun divination, these shells are given when you become an initiated priest, and then there's other pieces that we call ibos, which are deciphering or deciding factors. We have efun, which is a piece of cascarilla, ota, which is a stone. This is kake, and this is the hind leg of a goat. Specifically the one that a goat would use to to perch itself on when it's jumping over a fence or a bridge or a wall or something like that. And then we have a small shell called aye. So each one either determines yes or no. And the way that the system works is that you first do a series of liturgy and prayer, which we call a moyuba. After conducting libations with water, we do our moyuba, remembering our ancestors with a specific structure of prayer. And then we do what's known as a kinkamache, or mediashe, or power, or chi, or prana, right? Of priests be present, so we invoke and call different practitioners who we are aware of. We explain to Elegua what it is that is why the person is there, whether if they're looking to resolve a specific problem, or if they have just a general reading that they need to find some kind of direction in their destiny. And then the shells are cast. And so the way that they're read is that there's 2 composite sides. The back side of the cowrie shell is removed, so the side that we read is the side with the actual mouth, and depending on the patterns that fall, we count them, and then we're able to determine. Once we have the composite set of 2 signs, then you need to ask if the person comes with an ire, a blessing, or an osobaweyo, which is a negative orientation. If it's a positive orientation, we'll ask something like if it's a blessing of health, or a blessing of money, or children, or prosperity, or a new road, or a new opportunity, and so forth. And if it's a negative orientation, then we determine if it's sickness or death or loss, or some kind of personal struggle that the person may be receiving. Regardless if it's a positive or negative orientation, we also try to find the root of what is. So what is the root of that negative orientation? Or what is the root of that positive orientation? And then if it's a positive orientation, we ask if it's a complete and positive blessing, like if there's any kind of deficiencies that need to be done. Or if it's a negative orientation, what kind of salvation or larishe there is that can be done to help fix that person. So it's really finding a way to find things in a cosmic balance from this perspective, you know? And so it is extremely complex. There are what we call 256 oduns, or possible combinations. If you look at the Cowrie show, so it's 16 thrown twice, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1046. So it's basically megabytes, and it's a binary system. So it's like accessing a very old computer system. It has a lot of similar properties to the I Ching. It's a very complex oracle. It's very, very direct to your problem. A lot of times people will come in and they will have a specific issue that they want to address. Like they find that they have all this bad luck, and they're like, oh, I think somebody, you know, did some magic on me. And I find that 99% of the time it's not magic. It could be an issue with an ancestor, or maybe that person is not conducting themselves with proper character, or what we call iwapele, or they're perhaps doing something that creates a deficiency in their life, you know, odus that speak about vice, or about consumption of certain foods that are maybe negative, or certain cloth, or certain things. So we have different ways of accessing and changing your ashe based off of what it is, what the pattern is that comes out. So
That's super interesting.
it's
Can you,
very complex.
is it possible to give an example?
Of a reading?
Yeah. Can you do something quick, or is that not really, do you prefer not to do something like that?
Well, I wouldn't mind, but it probably wouldn't be something quick. In the case of like divining for this, it's probably going to be a good. I tend to talk a lot because I like to empty out the Odu. It's not a timed reading, so there's not really a way to say that like the person you know, we'll get a reading, and it will be like an hour long. People ask me, how long is your reading? And I'll say it could be an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, it just depends what the Odu. My responsibility as a practitioner is just be the interpreter and the mouthpiece for Legua to be able to give you all the information. Well, there's time for a reading only lasts like half an hour, 20 minutes. Let's say somebody comes with a complete perfect blessing. The Orisha's just telling them, hey, you're on the right road, you're on the right path. I think what happens is a lot of times, sometimes people will, there are people out there who use different kinds of divination systems and say things like, oh, you know, you got all this black magic on you and you got to load up on all these products. With my specific approach to the divination, I always try to find the most simple ways to solve things. A glass of water, a little candle, some food for your ancestors, maybe a series of prayers, you know, that kind of thing. So maybe visiting a natural body in nature of water, or some taking an offering to the forest or the crossroads and that kind of stuff. So, but what I can do is I'm going to grab my trusty book. This book is, as you can see, I won't go through it too much, but it's got all these different readings that I've done. This is actually all the readings I've done in the past 2 weeks. So sometimes it comes up to like 11 readings a day. It's pretty crazy, but I will give you an example of how a specific reading can be conducted and how I interpret it. Let me find something that's like a positive reading, and then that way you can see exactly what I mean by. Okay, so let me see here. I'm gonna put my finger over this person's name because I don't think it's appropriate to share their information as far as who received this reading. But I don't know if you can see there. It says 7-6 Ire Ariku and Yale.
Yeah.
So, you know, 7-6 is a very common sign that comes out. Like, for instance, so I pulled out 7-6 for that person. You know, I did my moyub, I did my prayers, and then, you know, I casted my dilogun. You know, I basically called a man, throw it, and then the pattern came out, and it was, you know, 7-6, right? Through 7 first, and I threw 6, okay? And so then I determined that this person came with a blessing, came with a positive orientation, okay? And the positive orientation will respond with a specific number or value as well. Then I ask, what's the positive orientation? And there's a specific hierarchy. In the case of this person, the first hierarchy, which the first one we always ask is ariku, which is health, because we consider the greatest blessing that you can have in life is health. Okay. Then I asked if that health was complete, and it said yes. They came with a complete thing. So then I would grab the 7-6, I grab the sign, and I start cutting up and breaking up. And that's probably one of the most common signs that comes out. I throw it quite often because it's a sign that deals with indecisions. It's very Libran. It says the peonia doesn't know if it wants to be red or black. There's this seed called the rosary seed. I'll give you an example of how we approach this. We approach it through the concept of pataki, or parable, or storytelling. So in this specific sign tells about this seed that was half red and half black, and it couldn't decide whether it wanted to be red or if it wanted to be black. And so much was the noise that it made to the heavens that one of the Orishas came down and grabbed all the seeds and put it in a gourd and said, now you're no longer red or black, now you live in darkness, silence. But the sound that the seed made when it was put into the gourd, it changed. And from there, the maraca was born, right? Which is why we use the maraca to speak to that specific Orisha. And I believe that these stories are like parables. They're metaphors for understanding material manifestation. And so what it's saying is, make up your mind and be firm about your decisions, because if you are not, then the people around you will make them up for you. One day you were a seed that didn't know what color it was, but now you have been encapsulated and trapped and enslaved and changed into a new form, into a new sound and instrument. So the advice to this person in this specific case would be something along those lines. Now, this person is an ire ariku, blessing of health. So it's saying that the decisions that they're making are leading them towards positive things, that they shouldn't second guess the steps and the strides that they've made in improving their health and in making their health better, and that they have to continue on that path because they're on the right path. And it turned out that that person had made some very positive decisions about weight loss and about their health and about, eating less sugar and that kind of stuff, and had seen marked improvements, and was kind of at a crux in their life because had lost a lot of weight and they were feeling very insecure. So the Orisha was almost reassuring them that the path that they were on was right. And even though that there may have been moments where they may be second guessing themselves, there's opportunity there for the person to continue doing well and doing, making healthier decisions. So that's kind of how the Dilogun works. The Dilogun is very interesting in that way. Now, the other oracle that I wanted to talk about is actual bone casting. We hear about bone casting, and I do teach bone casting at Zombie. Bone casting is the casting of curios and bones and different implements and items and curios to develop a insight or an intuition into things that are going on in material manifestation, the way things stack up. And your bone set might not even contain any bones. Some people just use different buttons or maybe different types of shells or coins, or and bone casting. When we talk about bone casting, we want to know that this is something that exists in many different cultures. So the idea of casting items to interpret it it's huge, and the idea of osteomancy, or using bones to divine, is not just a Southern hoodoo tradition. That's been done in many different cultures, including in Greek traditions, where they would do osteopyromancy, where they would grab bones and throw them in the fire, and then the way that the smoke would crack the bones, they would read and interpret it. So there's lots of different ways of interpreting this, but the approach that I do consists of an understanding or a tradition expansion of Sangoma bone casting, which is a specific form that comes from South Africa. And the other one would be Southern roots bone casting, as well as bone casting that's done in Florida and understood by that. Okay, and so my stuff has lots of different items, lots of different pieces. And when I teach bone casting, I explain that, there's a way to invoke and pray and do, certain things to get everything set up. I'm a very olfactory practitioner, so maybe I like to douse them in holy water, some specific perfumes or oils that I specifically like, do my prayers, smoke them out, do that kind of thing. And I really share about how to actually get that kind of set up. And then what I do afterwards is I will explain how the different pieces that I specifically use in my approach or work. Like we use something called an action piece, which is a bracelet, and everything that falls within that action piece are items that need to be immediately addressed. And like a Herkimer diamond, which is like, hey, look at this here, or a meteorite to show where a place of impact. There are some more traditional pieces, like for instance, the minx jawbone that's dotted, that represents negative speech, versus the minx jawbone that has no dots, that represents positive speech. Perhaps it deals with gossip or self-talk or self-worth or mantra or incantation or chant or that kind of stuff. I also have a bell that has no tongue in it. So the idea is like it's a bell with no sound, so it's looking for purpose. So this tells me a lot where the person's purpose or worth is. And the way that they're cast, when you cast them out, they stack on each other, and then you can interpret, different kinds of stuff. Like, for instance, if I was just quickly throwing this down on somebody, and I just threw them just an example, the negative speech bone on the heart reversed might give me an indication that this person probably has a lot of conflict or arguments in their personal love life. The person is conflictive or difficult. The way that certain curios and items fall together can be interpreted and understood from the dynamic or the perspective of somebody who has a personal experience with those ideas. That's why each bone casting set is absolutely unique. For instance, you might have the value that a butterfly is a symbol of transformation. I might view it just as something as simple as beauty. So each bone set is very personal, and I try to encourage people and help them to develop a natural intuitive connection to their bone set. Now, the thing with bone casting is it should never be taken as equal to as Dilogun, or Dilogun is equal to bone casting, because they're two very separate systems. I think that both equally require a level of understanding. It's good to find within the case of the Dilogun, you should be getting it done by an initiated practitioner who actually knows what they're doing, and who can actually give you and fulfill, because it's a very serious oracle, the ways that you can deal and address the certain issues that you're dealing with. In the case of bone casting, you should find somebody who has experience, who can maybe guide you, give you some kind of understanding, and help you to develop that skill in a responsible manner. So divination is quite interesting from an Afro-Caribbean perspective, because we have many other forms of divination, including Olbi Bata, where we use 4 coconut discs that we read on different composites that either say yes or no. We also use something called Shamolongo, which is the dried hull of the coconut, and it's read very similar to what we use with the Dilogun. And quite soon, it should be coming here as a traditional Congo friction oracle from the Kuba tribe. And Kuba, not Cuba. Kuba is in the Congo, and it's usually shaped in the long form of an animal, sometimes a dog or an alligator. And these oracles have incantations and prayers, and you put water and specific oils on the back of this animal, and you ask a question, and you rub up and down on this wood with this wooden piece, and when the answer gets, the oracle literally will stop and you won't be able to move it. It literally becomes like stuck to the wood. It's quite fascinating. The Kuba friction oracle is something that there are no practitioners out here in the United States. I think I will be the only person that will be offering that service. So I do try to bring different forms so we can talk about divination from a perspective that is a bit different. I'm quite fascinated by the idea of people who go out and read different things. So when I hear about somebody who reads like the tobacco, or maybe they go to the Krishna temple, and when they do the fire sacrifice, and they have moments of premonition and understanding by what they see during that process. Divination, I think, is it's a meditation. It's a pondering of principles, of very simple fragments of material manifestation, and how they interact with each other to create beautiful things in life, right? So like tarot cards, where you see the hangman with this card together and it has a specific implied meaning. That's kind of what happens with bone casting. Well, that is what happens. And that's what happens with the Dilogun divination, right? It's the same thing. So you might have an Odu, like, for instance, Odi, which deals with motherhood and, the matriarchal energy. And then you have Ogunda, which deals with surgeries and metal and that kind of stuff. And then that's where maybe a hysterectomy is born, or a cesarean, or it's, warning about a woman who may have problems in her reproductive organs. Or if you have something like Obara, which deals with kinghoods and generational passages between kings, the prince to the king to the prince, and then you'd have something like Unle, which deals with the head, which deals with the crown, the graying head, the graying hair. Now you have something that's giving you an indication that maybe this person needs to respect their elders more, or realize that where they come from is a place of uniqueness. And so there's 256 patterns in Dilogun. There are not set patterns in bone casting, that's left to intuition and imagination and insight and personal understanding. So there's definitely a lot of room for a lot of understanding about these oracles and for really getting it. But I do offer Dilogun divination at Zombie and bone casting as well. But I also teach bone casting. Bone casting is a lot more accessible now. As far as Dilogun, I reserve that for those who I've actually initiated as practitioners in Santeria. Because it is a formal oracle. But that's pretty much my approach to divination, and I think that it's a little different, but it's quite profound, and I'm always quite interested in other people's divination. So if you ever do something really cool that's kind of off the beaten path of tarot, not that tarot's bad, but I love like tasseography and stuff like that. So if people who do reading of wax.
Hmm.
I just love all that ceromancy, right? So if you ever do all that stuff, be sure to come on by and share with me, because I'm always curious to hear and learn a little bit more about what you do and how you divine and how you connect with stuff to the divine, and share that with me. So
That's amazing. Now you said that you teach bone casting. Now, something that I wanted to ask you about that. There are some people who will use the same divination method, but use their own interpretations. So, is that how it also works with bone casting?
yeah, absolutely. So bone casting, there's so many different approaches to it, right? So it's a natural, like you see people who do chicken bones, some people do raccoons, some people just use curios because they don't want to work with bones. Um, can you get like buttons and thimbles and all sorts of pieces like that and put it together and create a bone casting set? I think when we talk about bones, we get caught up on the idea of bone being like just bone, and the bone is a symbol of something that creates structure. So it's the idea of like creating like structure casting, or grabbing different items and creating a structure with them. Now, as far as the Dilogun is concerned with the cowrie shells, that's not open for debate. As far as if you're casting and you're not initiated, you can't utilize or incorporate Odu Ifa for specific reasons. Because, for instance, like there's certain ebos and things that are given to you when you're actually initiated as a practitioner. That gives you what we call like license to do that. So it's not like something you can do that. With bone casting, it's a lot more flexible, and anybody can do it. I mean, there are people that practice like Appalachian folk magic that cast bones. There's people in Los Angeles and Long Beach that I know that cast. People in the Seminole area in Florida, in the swamps where I grew up, that totally can cast. So bone casting is a little bit more different. It's accessible to everybody, and I think that with bone casting, there's always, with the like specifically Afro-Caribbean tradition, there's always like a fear of like encroaching on a culture, or maybe doing something that could be considered culturally appropriative. With bone casting, not so. Bone casting is it's a form of divination that's open to everyone. Now, when it comes to Dilogun, like I said, that's a little bit more of a serious divination system. So.
That's amazing. You gave us a lot of information, Genevieve. Um, why don't we, because you've given us a lot, why don't we finish up? Tell us the name of your business, what kind of things you do. You tell you do classes, and then how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so my shop is called Zombie World Market. It was originally Zombie Apothecary and Conjure Company, and I changed it to World Market because I'm catering more now towards different items from around the world that are of historical value, curios, antiques, jewelry. I work with several different artists who bring in their own jewelry and their own artwork. I love the idea of ethically sourced crystals, sage, and Palo Santo, incenses and resins from around the world. I try to get a little bit more of the obscure or random items that are not commonly used in some traditions, but that are used in Afro-Caribbean traditions. If there's ever anything that somebody specifically wants that I know is deals with my tradition or traditions of the diaspora, I will tend to get that. I have practitioners from Obia, Sangoma, Mandinka, Calabar, Yoruba, Dahomey, Congo. I get a lot of people from Ethiopia, people who practice magic with jinns, Middle Eastern practitioners. So I work with a lot of different practitioners. I'm literally telling you the best in Phoenix, people who actually practice all sorts of indigenous magic. I'm very connected to South America, so I do a lot of work with the Amazon and the rainforests and stuff with different practitioners out there. My thing is ethically sourced herbs, ethically sourced products to the best that we can. We don't get everything right, but we try to get as much as we can to try to reduce our environmental impact on the planet. I have a podcast on SoundCloud that you can listen to. It's called Zombie Conjure, Zombi Conjure, which I actually interviewed you for, and Cynthia Seb for, Pagan Pride. And I have all sorts of different guests on it. Anjali Didi, who came out, a Vaishnav practitioner who came and we did chanting of the Maha Mantra and all sorts of different cool things. So I'm very open to connecting. I want to be a loving bridge between many different cultures and kind of share and like really kind of be a buffer and a safe space for those who maybe are not represented or who have felt marginalized or do not have a space for certain indigenous traditions. But we welcome everybody and everyone's always open. There are no silly questions. You can ask whatever. I'm extremely accessible 24/7 pretty much. And you can reach me at, I'm at 1245 East Northern Avenue is the location. My telephone number is 928-399-1373. I usually book a couple days in advance for my reading. So if you are interested in a reading, you do want to book in advance. I also have a lot of social programs at the shop where we collect menstruation care products for homeless women and trans men, as well as care packets that we do this time of year. In fact, we've already have a nice collection going of like granola bars and health products and different kinds of things that we make Ziploc bags and we pass them out to the community. I run a Narcan program that's provided by Sonoran Prevention Works. So we get Narcan for people who are suffering with opioid addiction. It's never been my struggle, but it's never had to be for me to be involved. And we just try to do whatever we can to try to create a little bit of a difference and share whatever resources that we can to try to make the community better and to really have open dialogue and talk about stuff. I guess ultimately Zombie is about making sure that we're understanding how many similarities we have, but also respecting the differences enough that we're not, stepping on each other's toes. So it's kind of like creating a space that we can say, well, this is uniquely this, and this is how we can learn from each other. And I think by doing that, we create a better planet and a greater community, a more diverse community of magic. And so excited that I could be part of Pagan Pride and that you guys had us on board and stuff, and we can be there. And unfortunately we didn't get to do it this year because of COVID, but we still love you guys very, very much, and the whole community who have been so supportive during this pandemic and these crazy times. So anything that you need, you can count on Zombie. We're here for you, and I'm really grateful for having the opportunity to win Best in Phoenix New Times 2 years in a row, and I've only been open 1 year, so it's kind of interesting. I hadn't even had my grand opening party yet, and we got the 2019 for Best Voodoo Shop. Although we're not just a voodoo shop, we're a shop that works with Haitian voodoo, Benin voodoo, Palo Mayombe, Candomblé, Mandinka Calabar, Zulu. We have so many people. You'd be surprised how many tribes and nations are there that they were kind of that they've found me and been like, I'm grateful for being here, for having this space now that we can share our traditions. It's uniquely important, and your support is extremely appreciated. So thank you for letting me share this with you.
I'm really grateful that you were able to do so, and thank you for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Will do. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Love you all. Be safe out there, okay? Bye-bye.